Welcome to Nightfall Sleep Radio, where quiet mysteries and gentle storytelling ease you into a restful night. Tonight, we revisit the early 20th century, a time of steam trains and silver rails when travel held wonder and each journey seemed to promise more than a destination. In the spring of 1911, a mysterious legend was born in the Italian countryside. A private luxury rail line departed from Rome, bound for Milan. It was meant to be a short and elegant journey, the kind reserved for dignitaries and dreamers who wanted to explore the back country in style. But somewhere along the route, the train passed through a tunnel and was never seen again. There was no wreckage, no distress calls, just silence and decades of mystery. Tonight's story is not about a disappearance. It's about discovery. So settle in, breathe deeply, and follow us into the quiet hills of Italy, where time slows down and stories wait to be found. Part 1. The Train That Left No Tracks. The summer of 1911 was bright and unseasonably warm across the Italian countryside. Rome buzzed with energy, its cafes and piazzas filled with conversation. From the city's main station, trains hummed to and from every corner of the country. Loading passengers at one of the platforms was a polished bronze 3-car train that stood ready to carry 100 passengers northward to Milan. It was part of the Zanetti line, a discreet, privately run service that was taking its maiden voyage. It was setting out from Rome with no whistles and no fanfare, just a smooth luxury ride through lush fields, valleys, and low mountain passes of central Italy. On that warm July morning, passengers boarded and took their seats in the warm wooden and leather interior of the guest cars. There was a professor with a worn suitcase, a young couple who had won a lottery for tickets, a botanist carrying a book of pressed flowers, a civil engineer carrying a stack of folders, and there was Clara Moretti, a young woman traveling from Florence on her way to begin an apprenticeship in Milan's growing fashion world. Clara had studied textiles and illustration, and she brought notebooks filled with sketches of flowing silhouettes and textile patterns inspired by nature. This journey was her moment to take a breath before stepping into a life that she had worked toward for years. The train vibrated with life as it filled with passengers. Clara chose a dark velvet seat near the back of the railcar. She pulled a new journal from her satchel and began to write. Observations about the train, daydreams of her future life, snippets of the conversations around her, a soft pencil sketch of the woman across the aisle with a ribbon tied like ivy through her braids. The train rolled forward. They passed Florence, Bologna, fields of green and gold flickered past. Then came the hills. They entered a long tunnel, but not one listed on the modern rail maps. It arched through the earth like a soft breath beneath a mountain, and the train was never seen again. There were whispers of an accident, a tunnel collapse, but no wreckage was ever found. And in the confusion of the war that followed, just a few years later, even the tunnel itself was destroyed. And yet still the legend persisted, passed quietly from station master to traveler, folded into guidebooks and forgotten footnotes. And somewhere in the hills, the story waited. Part 2. A Journal in the Hills. Nearly 40 years later, a pair of hikers wandered through a forgotten trail that had once shadowed the old rail line. The woods had long since reclaimed the path, but the stones near the track still held their order. Trees bowed over the track bed, and wildflowers bloomed between the ties. They paused near a crumbling mile marker, where ivy curled like script across the stone. One of them spotted something nestled beneath the roots. A satchel, worn but remarkably preserved. And inside they found a leather-bound journal. The pages were yellowed and dry, but the ink had barely faded. It began with a simple date, July 17th, 1911, and the name, Clara Moretti. The entries were graceful and light. Clara described the interior of the train, the polished lamps, the velvet seats, the steady rhythm of the wheels. She wrote about her upcoming job in Milan and how she hoped to design garments that felt like memories, soft, expressive, full of light. She noticed the passengers. The professor was sketching birds in the margins of a newspaper, the couple sharing tea and laughter, and the conductor hummed a popular show tune as he passed. In her final entry, her tone shifted gently. "The train has stopped," she wrote. Not with alarm, just quietly. And outside, the sky is lavender, and the light feels slow. I think we've come to a place that isn't on the schedule. I'm going to step outside for a moment, just to look around. I may stay for a while. There was no fear, no urgency, just the calm tone of someone arriving somewhere unexpected, and perhaps even welcomed. The hikers looked around. Nearby, they saw faint impressions of old tracks that veered off from the main path, half swallowed by moss. They decided to follow the track. Part 3. A place between places. Guided by the soft curve of those ghosted rails, the hikers made their way through the woods. The forest air was still, filled only with birdsong and the rustle of leaves. After nearly a mile, they stepped into a clearing, broad and sunlit, cupped by gentle hills, and in its center stood the last car of a train. It wasn't rusted. It wasn't broken. It simply rested as if it had been pulled along long ago and chosen to stay. The doors stood open, and inside they found velvet seats, faded by time, a half-packed trunk beneath one bench, and a stack of empty notebooks. On the windowsill, someone had placed a single pressed flower. It was dry but intact. There were no passengers and no signs of distress. It was just a space held in waiting. They saw a side table and sat down Clara's journal. They closed it now, its ribbon marking the final page. The hikers did not open it again. They lingered for a time in the soft hush, and they quietly stepped away, leaving everything untouched. As they walked back into the trees, the clearing behind them seemed to fold gently into stillness, a place that was neither lost nor found, just remembered. Not all mysteries ask to be solved. Some invite us to pause, to listen, and to wonder. Perhaps the Zanetti train didn't vanish, but simply stepped off the map to a place that held space for quiet arrivals. And perhaps Clara Moretti, with her sketches and her hopes, found a path not toward Milan, but toward something softer, a different kind of beginning. As you drift into sleep, imagine the sway of a train on quiet tracks, the soft light through the windows, and a pause between destinations, just long enough to dream. Thank Thank you for joining us at Nightfall Sleep Radio. If you enjoyed tonight's story, we invite you to subscribe for weekly tales that soothe the spirit and settle the mind. Until next time, sleep well.